Hi, everyone. Welcome to True You Podcast, a storytelling space for self discovery, where we take this safe, brave space to address racial trauma and healing for Black women through our own lived experiences. I'm Kelly, and this is my co host.
Hi, I'm Debbie, and we're a mother daughter team having real conversations about real issues for and with Black women because we have something to say.
Yes, we do. So, hi everyone. So happy that today we have a very special episode entitled Sister Circle, and we have a panel of dynamic guests who all have something to say. And what makes this episode so special is because month after month we always end this podcast with "What do you need for racial healing?" And this time we get to explore even deeper by asking that question along with a mental health professional. So I am so happy to introduce Letitia from NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Health. Hi, Letitia. How are you doing today?
Hello, everyone. I want to say it's a pleasure that you have me on here. My name is Letitia, and I am a program manager over at NAMI Metro Suburban, where we specialize in helping individuals who suffer from mental health issues in the West Cook area. So, like Maywood, Bellwood, Broadview, and the surrounding western suburbs. We provide a holistic approach to wellness. We have three living rooms, we have a drop in center, and I manage the supportive employment program where we help individuals who suffer from mental health issues find and or retain employment.
Thank you, Letitia. Welcome.
That's wonderful.
I'm so excited to have you here with us. Um, This sister circle is also a variety of multi generational voices. So I want to introduce the special guests on our panel. We have Dallas, who is a teenager representing Generation Z. How are you, Dallas?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. We also have Kaylin, who has been a past guest in a previous episode, and she's in her 20s and she is representing the millennials. Welcome back, Kaylin. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yes. And I am representing Generation X, and my mom is representing the baby boomers. How are you feeling today, Ma?
I am great. I'm excited to represent the baby boomers.
See, we're all here representing today, so um, happy about that. And so I'd like to start with actually myself. So, as a black woman, I'm in my 40s, and I find myself needing to swallow my identity consistently throughout most of my life when it comes to the corporate world and how I can wear my hair, and when it comes to how I express myself in meetings, etc. I feel like I'm actually have like two identities. So it's one identity when I'm with family or outside with friends, and then another identity when I walk into the corporate world and businesses when it comes to how I can express myself and how I can speak when I'm in certain spaces. And I found myself in these executive meetings in my past jobs where I felt like I take on this separate identity, but can't even really relate to a lot of the things that they're speaking about. So either I'm have the false smile on my face, like I understand and I'm speaking the language, or just in general, I can just think of an example where I was at a training and I was of course the only black person, let alone female, and the conversation turned to a sprinkler systems, and everyone that was sitting in the training, they're like, oh yeah, my the struggles of their sprinkler system, and I'm sitting there like I can't relate on any level of this because I don't have a sprinkler system, nor do I know anything about one. And so I'm sitting there kind of like smiling, but then later it was interpreted that I was kind of like being antisocial because I wasn't joining in on the conversation. And so I found myself a lot of times needing to like in order to seem like you know that Kelly's not mad or she's not or she's being antisocial, needing to kind of like plaster a smile on my face and kind of just get a try the best I could to be a part of these conversations. And so that's just one example where I had to kind of swallow my identity to kind of fit into white culture. And so I want to ask the panel um, comes to you, and I'll start with you, Kaylin. Can you share a story where you had to kind of swallow your identity?
Actually, yes, I can definitely share a story where I had to swallow my identity. Now, of course, being the age that I am, I'm a little bit more vocal now. However, growing up, I did transition from a predominantly black school to a white school. And I do remember having moments where I feel like I sat in class and when we had group times, you know, when you have a partner or whatever, we sat there and as they were like describing things that would go on in their household, for instance, arguments that they have with their parents over like spoiled brat arguments, I can only sit there and kind of just look off into space like I'm sorry, like I can't relate, like I don't, my parents don't have, you know, that type of convertible to cry about. Like I get on a bus to come to school. So it was just, I just remember, you know, growing up and sitting back and having moments in school, moments in workplaces where I felt like I really wasn't able to be myself.
Yeah, I could relate to that as well. Dallas, what about you? Have you experienced that?
Yeah, I was gonna say I can relate. Going to OPRF, it being like predominantly white school, I've like struggled. I've been in like an all white honors classes. Like all of my honors classes have been mainly all white, and I've mainly been like the only black female. And like in one of my honors classes, like every day we would do a check in and like how are you doing? Like what are you gonna do for like spring break or summer break and stuff like that. And I could never like relate to what the white people were saying. Like it would always be like, oh, like yeah, we're gonna go to our summer house and do this, and it would always be like stuff that I couldn't relate to, and I would sit quiet, which is really not me. Like all my friends know, like I can relate to what Kelly was saying when she said like she's two different people around like her friends and like when I got into classes, and I'm like a really goofy person, so like being in the classes it was really uncomfortable and like I couldn't relate to what anyone was saying.
Yeah, I understand. I can definitely identify with that. Growing up, I went through the same things where we didn't have summer home either. We cleaned up the block. That was our cleanup. It was called cleanup week or spring break. Cleanup week was cleaning up the block, so that's what we did. But as a baby boomer, I grew up during the civil rights era, during a time where affirmative action was really taken over in the workplace, and so I was hired during that period, and it was definitely a time where I had to really struggle to fit in, mostly because they were predominantly white businesses, and when you get to the utility company, they had to have a certain number of African Americans or Hispanics working in the workplace. And so we were always looked at as, oh, you're affirmative action, or you don't really fit here, and so it was always a struggle to make sure that they understood that I was hired because I could do the job, not because my mother or my father worked here, because that was the deal back then. You only get in because of your parents or an uncle or grandfather. And so because of affirmative action, that's how a lot of African Americans got into various workplaces. And as a result, we had to deal with all of the ignorance of the white culture, being treated differently. You had to watch what you said. You had to be extra better than everyone else in order to keep your job because they were always looking to try to get rid of you. And so, yeah, it was, and it was something about, I realized early on, unless we're able to push through and make sure as black people that yes, we belong here, we are, trailblazers, making space for those that come behind us. And that's who I was thinking about, as I was working in these various positions, trying to pave the way for people like my daughters, and making sure that that they know there's a space for them in the workplace. And so after a while, things got better because they realized we were just as hard a worker as they were. And it continues on today, but it got better for me because I was able to move around and make it to different areas of the workplace. But as you get into each workplace, you still had to deal with those things all over again. And so as a baby boomer, I'm kind of used to the things that happened back then, and I was not very vocal, but I just did the work I was supposed to do, and I kept my head down and did what I was supposed to do. And it was hard during that time, and coping was something that I had to deal with by myself. And so moving into our next question, how do we cope presently with those things as far as racial trauma?
Mhm.
Because back then, racial trauma, you just dealt with it. You swallowed your tongue and you kept going, and you did that, and you reported them. But currently, the way it is now, I'm able to speak my piece, and that's the best part, is being able to share what
Mhm.
you're going through with a sister, or a spiritual director, or a pastoral counselor. And that's how I'm able to cope nowadays. As a pastor, I have other pastors that I speak with, and I also am a
Mhm.
part of a spiritual directors group. And so that's how I deal with racial trauma now. And so, Dallas, how do you deal with racial trauma? How do you deal with those things that bother you when you're in school and you're treated differently?
I would say there's been incidents at my school where like slurs have been written on the wall, and it's all been like put on social media. And like when you go to school and you're on social media and that's all you see on like everyone's page, it kind of becomes like we're being mocked, and it starts to become like really like oppressive. And it I just really just talk to my friends about it. We all go to like all my like black friends, they see it, and we've talked about like there's a difference between like getting it out there, like spreading the word like this is not right, or like really being mocked. And we talk about it, and I talk to my mom about the racial trauma, and like I asked her like, what do you think we should do? Like, am I being over dramatic or something like that? And I just like think about it, pray, and just hope, and talk to my friends. I'm also in this organization, so I
Right.
usually talk about it there. And I've spoke to the school board before about like things that go on in the school, so I usually just use that.
That's excellent, Dallas, that you have places that you can go to share and talk about racial trauma. And I love it when you said you pray and you talk to your mom. That's wonderful. How about you, Kelly? How do you deal with racial trauma currently?
I would say for me, I mainly talk to you about it. So, when I'm dealing with heavy things, you're usually my go-to when it comes to that, and then also my friends. But um, I find myself also using prayer as a source, and and journaling
Oh,
when
good.
faced with present or racial trauma. But I'm not like a heavy journaler, so to speak. But like if it's something really heavy and I can't find a means of getting it out my head, I'm a real heady person, so I'll try to use journaling. But I always look for. I don't have it all, the answers all the time. It's a process, but those are usually my go tos when it comes to dealing with present racial trauma, and it gets discouraging at times, but those are usually the outlets that I use.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for sharing. And I want to ask now, Caitlin, how do you currently deal with racial trauma? What do you do when you're faced with it right now?
When I'm faced with racial trauma, the way that I go about it, because I have had anxiety in the past, I've learned to take deep breaths before I vocalize what I'm gonna say next and just gather, my thoughts. However, to be honest, when at first I used to not say anything because I didn't know how to go about it. Now I'm a bit more vocalized because I've learned to understand that just because somebody may say something that may be racist to me, they may be ignorant to what they're saying. And I've encountered a racist comment made before, and I had to pull the young lady to the side and let her know like that wasn't okay to say. I can't remember verbatim exactly what was said. However, I do remember her apologizing and explaining that she honestly didn't realize that it was racist, in her mind. So you got some people that do know but still say whatever they want to say, and then you have others that are really honestly ignorant to not really knowing something that can potentially be racist to somebody else. So
That's
before
right.
I feel completely disrespected, and because as a black woman, we're already stereotyped as angry, or as soon as
Yeah.
we raise our voice, we the angry black woman. So to eliminate the stereotype, I do come off a little softer, but not naive, and I do let them know, that can't be said and that's not okay. And if nobody told you before, I'm here to let you know now. Don't say it again.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. That's good. Thank you,
No
Caitlin.
problem.
So proud of you, young ladies, because I didn't come up with that. As a baby boomer, I didn't come up with that. So thank you so much for being so real and honest with your answers. But as we continue talking about counseling and coping, there are, lines of coping and then there's counseling. There are different types of counseling. And what does existing counseling look like for you? And I'll go first with that question. I do know there are various types of counseling, and it's based on the need, what that person is going through. But you don't know where to start in a lot of cases. And so, as a pastor, I have had people come to me for counseling, and I have referred them to someone else based on their need. And so, as far as the kind of counseling that I've seen, various types of counseling. It's that pastoral counseling. It's mental health counseling as well, where you. I know at one point I couldn't get a hold of what I was going through. I couldn't. The person, my spiritual director and my pastoral counselor couldn't help me because I was in a space where I could not verbalize what was going on with me. So I ended up going to a mental health therapist, a counselor, to help me talk through what I was going through. And once I was able to verbalize what I was going through, Then I was able to go back to my spiritual director or my pastoral counselor. Sometimes there are levels of counseling, and if we don't, for me, I know that I had to hand off people that I was working with, and I knew that I needed to be handled. I didn't know it at the time, but they handed me off to someone that could help me. So that's what counseling looks like for me. Existing counseling, knowing when we can't, that I'm not the one that can help you. Let's move on to Kelly. You want to share?
Yeah, I think for me, like you said, there are different levels. I see like your pastor, that being like the traditional, that's kind of how we grew up. Like, you got a problem, pray about it, go talk to your pastor. But then I found like when I was dealing with like heavier things, um, considering therapy seems, or considering therapy in an actual mental health facility seemed very sterile. It wasn't inviting to me. It felt like I couldn't really find a relationship when it came to the therapist because they didn't look like me. And so I did try it for a little while, but I did not have a good experience because I felt like that person couldn't necessarily relate to what I was going through, and I did not feel comfortable sharing. I felt like it was more that you you're just listening to just be listening and not really hearing me, which is a difference. And so even though I had this experience, I know that things have changed, and that people are going, they are having positive outcomes when they go to therapy. But I think for me that was not the case, and so because of those past experiences, it was hard for me, and it's still hard for me to kind of look in that direction again. But because I ended up using like those different outlets to cope, like family and friends, because I felt comfortable talking to them. Um, and so that's not to say that um, that my way is the only way. I'm just saying that was my experience, and so um, that's kind of how I see a lot of times these mental health facilities, and when it comes to like actually finding a therapist, it's a lot of work on the person who's trying to get help. So um, that, that's
That's
it.
good. Dallas, how about you? Have you had, what does existing counseling look like to you?
I would agree with Kelly. I would say that I've never really been to like any therapist. I like talk to my mom, or I pray about it, but I've never really been to any therapist because they don't look like me, like Kelly said, or because I feel like they can't relate. Sometimes it's also like I feel that sometimes my feelings can be like invalidated by other people because I'm younger, or and because of my skin color, because I'm usually like looked upon as like goofy or strong. That's the stereotype that black women have always had. So I don't feel like I could get help from a therapist. To be honest, like a lot of my other like white peers have, because I know a lot of people that have had therapists and can relate, or even at my school when we have like social workers, they have been pulled out a lot randomly, and I've never like even met my social worker besides like meeting, like talking to her with my advisory class. But yeah, I just feel like Kelly said, like they would really just be listening to listen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dallas. Very good. Um, I can totally relate because if if you don't feel you have a connection with someone, it's definitely hard to. to relate, to have them to relate to what you're going through. So thank you so much, Dallas. I'm going to hand it off to Kelly.
Yeah, so we know there are challenges as a mental health organization, and so I'm so happy that Letitia, you're here today. But what message would you like to communicate as far as to the community after listening to what we've just expressed on the panel, but also just in general?
Thank you again, guys, for having me. Just listening to what Caitlin and Dallas was speaking of, and Kelly yourself as well touched on some valid points. You know, as a culture, we believe that we could pray our way out of everything, but I want you guys to be mindful about every miracle that took place in the Bible. It involves some type of work being done, and that work, as related to the topic of mental health counseling, would be to talk to a therapist. You have to do the work. And historically, African Americans have not trusted mental health in the medical field because of our experiences. But we are a strong and resilient people. And when it comes to the capacity that we're seeing in as therapists, that's what particularly made me want to get into this field. Initially, I wanted to start out being a correction officer. I always wanted to help our youth get on the right track. And I felt like, hey, let's go do something in corrections. But I figured out that wasn't the place for me. So then fighting for my rights within the workplace made me go get a master's in human resources. So I became resourceful about things and topics that was taking place in the human resource field, like we touched on being an African American in the workplace, being a woman in the workplace, being a minority in the workplace. So I educated myself on that, ended up landing a job at NAMI. And most of the sessions took place was talking about the client's mental health issues rather than employment. So I went ahead and became a counselor. And just to let you know, we all have some type of lived experience when it comes to mental health issues. So my message to the community is talk to someone. First start off in your home. Talk to your parents about what your experiences are. Talk to your teachers, talk to your friends, someone who you can trust and someone who you can feel comfortable with. In addition, don't be afraid to, if you're feeling different, just like if you had a cold or a cough or something like that, you would go to your doctor and explain the symptoms. When you're not feeling right when it comes to your mental health, it's the same thing. And like I say, at some point we all have a mental health issue, so you shouldn't be afraid to discuss that with anyone. If you feel like you're off and if you're in a state of depression or whatever it may be, just be willing to talk. I know we have a stigma against mental health issues, but we have to get rid of that stigma and advocate for ourselves and be resourceful and identify people and places that are willing to help us, and for the things we need, like mom indicated, like we have to be able to find someone we can talk to, whether it's your pastor, your friend, your teacher. And we can't find someone to do it for us. We have to find that resource ourselves. So that's one thing I wanted to speak to the community about, just advocacy and self being a resource for yourself.
So I think at this point, I just want to open it up to the whole panel where we can address questions to each other, and and just it doesn't matter who, just kind of like um, whoever you wanted to ask a question to, feel free. So I will open it up to anyone who wants to ask the first question.
I don't have a question, but Kelly, I do have a comment. One thing that I have found working with youth and teens in the African American community, my supervisor, I work for a nonprofit as well as for a mental health hospital. And when I'm dealing with the youth in the mental health hospital, my supervisor asks, how how can I relate so much to the patients within the hospital? And I let them know all the time, I am a product of their environment. So the things that they are speaking about, most of the people they're talking about, I'm familiar with some of the places they've gone, places they're at, and the things they are experiencing. So I think like sometimes just educating ourselves on our surroundings and communities will help us be a part of certain conversations, whether in the African American community, Caucasian community, Hispanic community. I think education is key as well.
I think since you talked about those lived experiences and how that brings those relationships, and just like how we're talking about our lived experiences on this podcast, um, to build relationships as well. Kaylin, I wanted to ask you if you had any questions to ask the panel.
I actually did have a question. I had a question for Letitia. I was actually wondering because I'm kind of big on like mental health myself. I'm a strong believer in like, when you get your mental together, it's the law of attraction and everything else will just fall into place. And I would like to know, what led you to believe like that this is what you want to do in life, like humanitarian work? Like what made you have that moment and say, this is what I want to do. I want to help other people, and that's what makes me happy.
Caitlin, thank you for asking that question. Originally, I have always had a spirit of helping individuals. One thing I do believe in, I believe in giving more than receiving. I come from nothing. When I tell you I grew up on the west side of Chicago, 16th Street, 16th and Lundale, I come from nothing. And I was a product of domestic violence. I was a product of being a single parent home. I am a first generational college student, so I always felt like that was more out there for me. So, like I said originally, I always been good at writing like resumes and helping people find jobs, just being very resourceful. I wanted to help like youth that got in trouble but didn't know how to get a job. I wanted to do that, so I say, hey, I'll go into the corrections field, and my kids was afraid of me having a gun, so I went in another direction. So I say I want to learn about human resources, to learn about, like if someone does have a criminal background, how could they navigate through the work system to find a job. And so it all started there. And with my human resource background, I end up landing a job at NAMI as the employment specialist, helping individuals who have mental health issues find jobs. But when I got into the sessions with my clients, they will just tell me their problems, like things that they were experiencing in regards to mental health. I say, this is God's sign telling me to go back and get a degree in counseling. And that's exactly what I did. So I have a dual master's. I have a master's in human resources and a master's in counseling. And that's what put me on this road.
Yes, I love it. It's very motivating and very inspiring. So
Thank you.
yes, I definitely had to ask that because I hear you. When you said it's not something that you kind of grew into, it was something that you always wanted to do. It was always in you, and
Hmm.
I feel like I'm somewhat the same way. I my friends, my family, I noticed that a lot of people confide in me and come to me and just
Hmm.
completely open up right off the back. And I kind of started looking at it like, maybe this is a good thing that a lot of people trust me and come to me with their problems. And it kind of, I've been thinking about getting into counseling myself. So I think what you're doing is awesome.
Thank you. The good thing about it, Caitlin, there are many avenues you can take when it comes to the counseling realm, and you already have tools in your toolbox right now for counseling. If people are coming to you and they can trust you, if you go to school for counseling, they would just equip you with different techniques and other tools in regards to navigating through the field yourself. But you already got what it takes if people are confiding in you already. So I say go for it.
Some good advice. Good advice.
Thank you.
I can go next. I do have a question. I just wonder, you hear the word like mental health a lot, like it's almost a buzzword. And so my question is, there are different levels, and not to disregard what someone is going through, but I think a lot of people use these words just because it's easy to say, oh, I'm dealing with this. I need, I have this, I have that. When it's people who are really dealing with some real extreme mental issues. So I think my question is, do you feel like, as far as where we are today, where mental health, the word mental health is used a lot, and also when it comes to people dealing with real issues, is there a barrier to access when it comes to people who are really dealing with things because of how things have shifted and how everyone is kind of using the term mental health for whatever they're dealing with on so many different levels.
Well, one thing to think about, Kelly, when you think about mental health, as I stated earlier, we all have had some type of experience with mental health. Some of us may have not just been diagnosed, had a medical diagnosis, but when you think about that, I want us to think about one thing. When it comes to mental illness, it is a spectrum of things. Being obese is a mental health issue. So, being overweight, suffering from anxiety, depression. Growing up in the city, like I said, I grew up on 16th and Lundale. I have never been diagnosed with PTSD, but when I hear a gunshot, I mean a firecracker, I may jump thinking it's a gunshot. So that's a that's a characteristic of having PTSD. So we all have had some type of experience with mental health issues, but I think some are more serious than others. And one thing I want you to think about too is situational issues with having with mental health concerns. Sometimes we can have situational mental health. Like if you're getting ready to take a test and you're dealing with stress, you're stressed out, you have anxiety, so you don't have a mental health diagnosis, but you are experiencing some of the things that the same person who have a full diagnosis of it.
Thank you, Letitia. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
Just wondering, are there any other questions for Letitia? Do we have any questions for one another?
I have a question to Kelly and Mom. What made you guys venture out into having the conversation in regards to mental health and finding the importance of such topic? I know, working in the field, I am passionate about talking about it. But what made you guys do it?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I can go. I think what made us have to what made us get together and try to do this podcast is just dealing with our own stories, and by us being like mother daughter, like my story is different from my mom's, but there is still a connection in those relationships, as far as us still dealing with racial issues and racism, and how that trauma manifests. And so I started. I got my master's in social justice, so I really had like a passion, like you, for like hearing the voice of community and helping people. And so I felt like, even if maybe, like I said, I had my experience with mental health and therapists, but my mom had like a different story. And so as we talk to others within like family, everyone has a story, and we all have something to learn from one another. And so just in terms of how we can build relationships and feel safe, that's key. A lot of times you don't feel safe in telling your stories, and so, but then when you do tell your story, you realize someone else might have gone through that same thing, or they can connect, and you can kind of lean on each other through whatever you're going through. And so I think that's why I really wanted to start this podcast, and be like a outlet for others that are not only like within this podcast as our guests, but those who are listening as well, because we all have our stories to tell.
And I think for me, I was invited to join the podcast, and I was honored to do that. My background, of course, is in human resources, and I'm also a pastor. And having sat and talked with various people about what they are going through and realizing, oh, I can't help this person. I need to pass this person on to someone who is a therapist. And just, those connections and knowing that we as Black women, we're afraid to talk about those things because we've always felt as though, I know I've always felt as though, I'm going to talk to my pastor, I'm going to talk to my mom. But we had to get to a point where we can't be all things to all people. And we needed to know, I know we needed to understand that we needed to be able to pass people off and let them know that, it's good to speak to someone that can help you further on. And so because we went through one period where we talked about the generational hush, and that was a podcast that we talked about, and we realized that there were things within our own family that we weren't sharing with one another because of the stigma. There's always been that stigma about mental health, and doing this really helped both of us to push forward and be able to talk more about what's going on in our family, and it opens up other people to talk about those things as well. So that's I think that's pretty much how we got started in doing the podcast, and it's been fun. Yeah, I've enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed our guests, and I'm just really thankful for all of you that have joined us on today.
Yeah, one more question. I want to bring Dallas in,
Okay,
since she's the
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 young.
young voice on the panel, and I know dealing with a lot of things in high school as well as the social media definitely being a piece of that. And so, my question is, do you feel using your voice? Because I know just how there's been protests and all kinds of things that you've been a part of, and so just wondering, like from that perspective, how do you feel about your impact as a young person dealing with these racial issues, and how do you deal with that? And do you feel like it's helpful the how you've used your voice?
So I would say, like, when I was doing the protest or like talking to the school board and like the speeches and the meetings, I do feel like I was getting my voice across. We would do even like assemblies at school, and I do think I was getting my voice across, but at the same time, like, I don't know how impactful it was. Like, at school, we would have like someone say the N word, and like we would talk about it, and having we had an assembly about it that I had to speak at, and like I would talk to like the kids, even the teachers. And a black teacher one time said to me, like, I don't know how you think like you're gonna get the white kids to stop saying the N word. It's impossible. They're gonna keep saying it. So like I don't see your point. And like just saying like it wasn't realistic that I wanted that to like the N word to stop being used at our school. And like even kids like not taking the assembly serious or laughing or thinking it's a joke, which made me feel that I wasn't getting my voice across. But when I would like explain these things to my black friends, or like when I would say my speeches, or when I went to the school board, I would have like my mom so proud of me, my friends so proud of me, like the people that I was in the organization so proud of me, and just even if the like my voice wasn't getting across to like the white people or some of the teachers or stuff like that, it was important to me that I was getting across to like the people that count the most, like them telling me things that they've been through and me like expressing it to everybody, just them like trusting me with the stories and what they've been through and my friends and me trusting them, I seen how proud they were of me. Like even with my mom, the first time I had said a speech about dress code and like black girls with the dress code at the school board, and she cried, and that just made me like happy because I feel like she wasn't able to like speak out about black women being sexualized, but I had opportunity to. So I feel that like even though it might have not been like impactful on some people, it's the people that mattered the most, and like getting my voice across that way.
I love that answer, Dallas, and I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, and keep using your voice. There are people in your life who are encouraging you and are impacted by the work that you're doing in your school and to the school board. So I encourage you to keep doing it. I'm so proud of you myself, to know you and just the woman that you're becoming, and just all the great things that you're doing. So um,
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah, we are. I am so proud of you also, Dallas. You have truly. I watch you grow. I've watched how you have grown into your voice, and you have just truly been an outstanding voice for the community of Oak Park and River Forest High School. So we are very proud of you. So thank you so much for what you do and continue to do. Okay, God bless you.
Thank you.
And And with that, we are coming to the end of our podcast as we close out today. I want to thank our guests for coming and sharing their stories. Letitia, we're so grateful for the work that you do at NAMNI. We're thankful that you were able to come and join us today. Thank you, Dallas, our youngest member of the panel. We're so proud of you and the work that you're doing, and also so proud of Caitlin. Caitlin, thank you so much for sharing your voice as well. I love the idea that you're even thinking about taking on the same type of a role or a job as Letitia. I think you do really well. So thank you all so much. And as we are growing and using this podcast, we want to open it up to more conversations like this one, and they are needed in our communities. And we're happy to announce also that we have our own website. We have a website, and you can now find us at www.truuyou.org. www.truuyou.org. And we welcome you to check it out. Feel free to leave some positive comments. And with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. We wish you peace, love, and joy. God bless you.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you for having me.
This episode of True You is brought to you by Radiant Vessels and sponsored by Proviso Partners for Health and Women Leaders in Philanthropy. Funds for True You, a storytelling space for self-discovery, were received from Women Leaders in Philanthropy, a giving group of the Oak Park River Forest Community Foundation.